Okay, hello everybody. It's 7 o'clock and we're just about ready to start. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm delighted to have a couple of people with me tonight to look at the secondary food lessons from Oak National Academy. So we've got Roy Ballum, who has been instrumental in putting together the curriculum and the lessons that we're going to be going through this evening. And then we've also got Sam Booth, who is the excuse me, the subject lead for design technology at Oak National Academy. So it's brilliant to have them here with us this evening. So what we're going to do just before we start is we're just going to do a couple of bits of housekeeping. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on Food of Facts of Life for you to listen back to if you'd like to. If you've got any questions, please type them in the chat box and they'll be answered at the end. And also it would actually be great to know who you are as well. So if you could pop your name in the chat box, maybe which school you're at, that would be really helpful. And then at the end of the webinar, we'd be really grateful if you could complete a short online evaluation. It will take you about a minute at the most, but it will be really helpful to us to know what worked well, what maybe could be improved in the future, and actually what other training would be useful to you as well. And then once you've completed it and submitted it, you'll be given a link to a downloadable certificate. Download that and then add your name to it, print it out, and then put it in your records for future reference. Okay, so a little bit for welcome. So first of all, before we start, actually, this is the 5th in our series of 10 webinars, which is has been supported by the All Saints Educational Trust. So we're very, very grateful for their funding to enable us to do this. So what we're going to go through is the Oak food curriculum structure, but particularly looking at that from a secondary point of view. We're going to look at the Key Stage 3 lessons and all the elements that go into the lessons. Going to look at the free resources that are available and the lessons themselves. And actually there's 36 lessons that you'll be able to access. A little bit of practical guidance and a demonstration. So Roy's going to go onto the website and show you the website and how to look at the lessons and how to use them. Thinking about the support for your pupils, but then also thinking a bit more support for you, and particularly how you can use what we're doing with these webinars and the resources that we've put together, but also how you can use the Oak lessons to support your CPD too. And then we're going to look at next steps as well. Okay, so Roy's going to take over now. Roy's going to just quickly introduce himself, and then he's going to look at the Oak curriculum structure, particularly thinking from a secondary point of view. Thanks, Roy.
Thanks, Francis, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. So I'm Roy Ballum, and I've been working with the British Nutrition Foundation and the Oak National Academy as the Cooking and Nutrition Curriculum Design Lead, which is a bit of a mouthful, but essentially what we've been doing is to try and build the cooking and nutrition curriculum, so working out what learning is taking place. And although we're focusing on Key Stage 3 tonight, actually our job was to look at Key Stage 1, 2 and 3 and how that all fits together, plus also to produce all the lessons too. And in primary you'll have 72 lessons, and in secondary there's 36. So actually there's 108 lessons that you can get access to for free. So what we've actually achieved is to manage to build a fully sequenced and coherent curriculum plan. And we believe it's flexible, it's accessible, so that's really important for you, and also diverse too. And it gives you planned teaching from year 7 through to year 9, and it builds upon all the learning that happens in the primary phase too. There are 36 lessons, 12 for each year, and around about 1 hour per lesson. Now, I say around about one lesson. Some of the lessons can be quite long. So therefore, I think that you could probably get one lesson and divide them into 2. So we'll have a quick look at that a little bit later. We just really wanted to make sure the lessons were absolutely rich and detailed and enabling you to take what you want and to use that information. Now, all the information covers the national curriculum, D&T Cooking and Nutrition. You can see here, I've popped it on the screen just to the right-hand side. And what we've done is to unpack those 4 sentences which are in the national curriculum for cooking and nutrition, and we've unpacked that to cover all of Key Stage 3, the 36 lessons, but also show the progression between year 7, 8, and also year 9 too. And we're going to go through that later. It's going to show you how that has been unpacked, but also we were very mindful as well to think about trying to future-proof things where we could. So we've included other information such as sustainability, consumer awareness, and also a real emphasis on diversity too. So the key curriculum is structured like this. So there are units that are within each year. There are 4 units per year, and in a unit there are lessons around cooking, healthy eating, where food comes from, but also there's a social context as well, really trying to bring everything together. And you can just see here on the right hand side where it says year 7, 8 and 9, you can see the 4 units per year, and you can see always unit 1 is the cooking. So in year 7 it says independent and confident cooking, whereas year 8 unit 1 rather is around cooking techniques and proficiency, and year 9 unit 1 is around accurate and precise cooking. So even by the unit titles, and when you come to look in the lesson titles, we've tried to indicate progression running all the way through. And as I mentioned, the lessons are content rich. So I really believe that you can split the lessons or focus on one part that you want if you've got shorter lessons, for example, too. So it's very rich available to you. There's also these threads, and you can see these on the far right hand side, and these are weaved right the way through from Key Stage 1 right the way through to Key Stage 3. Now, they're a great way for focusing on what you want to find out about. So, for example, it might be aspects of food culture. You might be interested in cooking, or perhaps sensory, or perhaps food science. So it's a quick way to look at the units and to look at lessons too, to help you search and use your time more efficiently. We also know that all the lessons and resources are flexible, so you only use what you want. 1, they're free. Well, that's a great start, isn't it? But then you don't have to use all the units or all the lessons in their entirety. You might just want to go in and use one worksheet, or one set of questions from one worksheet, or perhaps just one slide or a whole slide deck. It's entirely up to you. So we'll go through tonight about how you can look at what you do and how you can use these to help enrich your lessons at school. And all the lessons are progressive. So as I've shown you, they link to Key Stage 1, 2 and 3. But also, not only are they progressive, they can be used as standalone lessons well, which might be helpful, for example, as a cover lesson. So let's have a quick look at year groups, units and lessons. So year group, so let's take all of the year groups here. So this is Key Stage 3, year groups 7, 8 and 9. And if you look into that image there, you can see under filters, just to the right hand side, you can filter all of the year groups in Key Stage 3, or you can just focus on year 7, year 8 or year 9. And you can also filter and have a look at these units and so forth by those threads that I also mentioned. So that's the kind of the helicopter view over the top. And then if I click on one, I go and get what is in a unit. So this is a year 8 example, for example. And in this unit, there are 3 lessons. So I've got a lesson on plant rich and diverse. And I've got then 2 cooking lessons, one around mushroom bean burgers and the other one on a beef and lentil cottage pie, for example. And if I click on one of those lessons, I then go straight into the lesson detail, the information. So that's where you'll find all the slide deck and worksheets and so forth. So that's how the system works. And progression, as I mentioned, is built in. Now, you probably won't read every single word on this, but you can actually download this document from the Food A Factor Life website. And what we've done is to provide you all of the thinking that happened in the background. So for year 7, you've got all the unit links, direct links. You've got all the lessons, you've got the outcomes, the learning outcome, and then all the key learning that happens. And then you've actually got the lesson link as well. And what you can do is you can map this across. So let's take the top one here, independent and confident cooking. So that's year 7 running across. You can then look at year 8. And there's year 8 at the top. There's cooking techniques and proficiency. So that runs across all of year 8. And you can look at how that progression works, how that maps between year 7, year 8, and then over into year 9 with accurate and precise cooking. And of course, that's also true if you're looking at healthy eating. So it starts with the Eat Well guide. It then looks at energy and nutrients, and then health and dietary needs. Or perhaps you're interested in where food comes from or aspects to do with sustainability. In year 7, it's around food origins. Then year 8, it looks at more sustainable diets. And in year 9, it looks at global food challenges. So there's a hell of a lot of information here that you can access all for free. We've also made sure that we've embedded learning in the practical lessons. So out of the 12 lessons for each year, 8 of them are practical lessons. And I've put the in sort of inverted commas, practicals, because what we've also done is to make sure that there is key learning also embedded into these practicals. So if I just look at the top one here as an example of making a sweet potato katsu curry, you can see here one of the key learning, yes, is around the food skills, but also there's key learning around personal hygiene and food and safe food handling. There's also information and learning around the Eat Well guide about plant-rich and diverse diets. There's also some social commentary running through as well about the link to Japanese cuisine, for example. And then the key learning 5 is about how recipes can be modified for different messages, and particularly here around health. So you can see here we've embedded learning. It's not just about cooking and practicals. There's lots of rich, deep learning that can happen right the way through. So now I'm just going to spend a moment exploring some of those lessons and the free editable resources that you can get. And what's available? Well, there's so much. And really, I would say it's a complete food teaching toolkit. It's a great start. If you haven't got much, it's really a rich place to go to and get lots of slide decks, quizzes, worksheets and videos to help your teaching in school. So what's included? Well, I've mentioned the slide decks. So the slide decks provide all the detail for the lesson, and they're broken into different learning cycles. And the reason for that is so that we don't overload pupils, that cognitive load. Also, there's information that starts with the pupil outcome. So you can see one on the right-hand side here. And that one here, it says, I can identify ways diets can be healthier and more sustainable. So that's what they're going to achieve by the end of that lesson. And then there are keywords, so it's very sort of vocab rich as well, and it ends with a really useful summary. And throughout the slide decks, there are also things like checks for understanding, just to make sure pupils are with you, just to check their attention. So they're really handy, quick form of assessment. And there are also tasks available at the end of each of those learning cycles too. And those tasks also appear on the pupil worksheet. So pupils could have the worksheet and you could be going through the lesson on the whiteboard, for example. And everything is completely editable. We've really taken great care to get great food images. We've tested every recipe, took photographs of all the recipes. There's some great illustrations on them, and they're there for you to use and for you to embed in your own teaching. So whether it's a whole slide deck, one slide, one paragraph, it's there to support you, make your life easier, to save you time, and hopefully from a trusted source too, from Oak and from B&F. And I mentioned they're very content rich with embedded learning, and there's those building on those threads running right the way through from Key Stage 1 through the end of Key Stage 3. There's also lots of videos as well. And you can see here, I'm in some of these videos on the screen here. And what happens here is the whole lesson is actually presented. And I go through everything, including asking questions, looking at the answers, and that might be useful for you in your class. So the teacher goes through all the slides, asks the questions, set the tasks, and it could be something maybe you link into independent learning. You could have it on the screen and you could encourage your pupils to engage and go through. So there's lots of different ways in which it could be used. Perhaps you're a trainee teacher, an ECT, perhaps you're a non-specialist food teacher. These might be something really useful for you to look at and support your teaching in secondary school. So they could be used in a variety of ways. So you could use them in class with pupils following and you guiding them through, perhaps use an independent study, or perhaps part of your own CPD, which we'll have a little bit more of a look at very shortly. There's also lots of worksheets too. And what I really like is that they're based on the slide deck. So everything kind of dovetails together really, really nicely. You can print them out, but of course they're all editable as well. So you can make them the best you possibly can for your pupils. You know what works in your school for your kids as well. One thing I also want to mention is that within all the worksheets, there's also sample answers as well, which I think is a really great way forward. So that's all there for you. There's also lots of quizzes. And these again are available as a worksheet, which pupils can then use. The answers are also provided, which is always really, really helpful, and they're found at the end of the lesson. Again, these are editable or available as a PDF. And there's also very similar exit quiz, so you can test what pupils retain by the end of the lesson as well. So a huge range of information and support available for you. I'm going to quickly hand over to Frances to go through the recipes now.
Thanks, Roy. That's great to find out so much about all of the different elements of the lessons. So as Roy mentioned, we've got 8 out of the 12 lessons at secondary, which are practical. They're predominantly savoury, with 1 sweet recipe per year. So we followed the national curriculum guidance around that. And also what we've done is made sure that we've got food skill progression, which we've built into each of the lessons. So Roy showed you the spreadsheet that covers each of the lessons in year 7, 8 and 9, and he showed you the progression from that. But we've also thought, as well as sort of the theory knowledge, we've also thought very carefully about food skill progression and making sure that we've used evidence-based information and resources to actually build up a nice bank of recipes that really follow skill progression right from the beginning of Key Stage 1 through to the end of Key Stage 3, and then forward onto Key Stage 4 if you're going to teach Key Stage 4. The recipes are all within the slide deck. So we've got the slide deck, we've got the pupil worksheet, and then we've got teacher additional information, which I'll go through in a moment just to explain what we've put into that in order to support you. And then also within the slide deck, we have mentioned what the food skills are. So you'll be able to use those when you're thinking about the intent for a lesson, as in what theory you'd like to embed in that practical activity, but also what food skills you're going to be using, and allowing the pupils to apply, develop or secure maybe. And we've included videos that will perhaps help you around the food skills, which actually demonstrate the food skills. They're sort of peer-to-peer videos, so you'll be able to show the pupils exactly how they should use those food skills safely and then develop them as they go along. Thank you, Roy. Oh, and other embedded learning. So as we mentioned, we've been very, very careful to make sure that when you come to do a practical, so when you come to make a recipe, it's not just about making that recipe. That's not the outcome. The outcome is all around the learning that's going into making that recipe and embedding that. Okay, additional information, mentioned this previously. This we think is a great rich resource for you as a teacher, which give you some really good information around running this particular practical lesson based on this recipe. So this one, for example, is making pea and mint falafel with tzatziki. We've provided practical suggestions for cooking activities. So whether that you need to be thinking about pre-weighing any of the ingredients beforehand. Maybe you've got to the point in your lessons that you don't need to see the pupils weighing and measuring. Maybe they've done that a long time ago. And actually, there's another aspect of the lesson that you want to focus on. So perhaps it would be a good idea for you to pre-weigh all the ingredients beforehand for them, if you can, or you get the pupils to bring them in pre-weighed, if that's the system in your school. You could also think about group work, because that enables pupils to learn great skills about working together, but also it helps to potentially reduce the amount of ingredients you need, so therefore the cost, but then also the amount of equipment you might need as well. And then also thinking about the kind of demonstrations that you might want to give and show the pupils particular parts of the recipe in order to make sure that they're going to have a successful outcome at the end. You've got ideas for modifying the recipe, so the ingredients. So that could be as simple as using seasonal ingredients or homegrown or school-grown ingredients. but also it might be that we might suggest that you use a different type of grain or pasta or rice or something like that. So we're giving a little bit of creativity perhaps to the recipe. Some advice about setting up a classroom. You may be a very experienced food teacher, but we also may have trainee teachers using these resources or ECTs who might need a little bit more guidance about how to set up a food room. So we've put that together in the form of a blog. So that you might find that helpful to have a look at. Risk assessment, there's a paragraph on the additional information around risk assessment. We don't provide specific risk assessments for each of the recipes because the place to go for that is the National Organisation for Health and Safety for Practical Activities in Schools. So that's Design and Technology, Science and Art, and that's actually CLEAPS in England. So most schools are members of CLEAPS, so do go and find out about that, and you should be able to get access to risk assessments that you'll be able to adapt for your school. And then also ingredients. So you have your ingredients list, but also we've identified where you need to be aware of potential ingredients that may cause an allergic reaction. And so we've identified those and then made some sort of suggestions about alternatives that you could use, or maybe there's a pupil that may not be able to eat or handle certain ingredients for other reasons. They may be a vegan, for example. So what are the kind of things that you need to be thinking about with this particular recipe? Thank you, Roy. Okay, Roy's going to now do a demonstration. He's going to go onto the website and he's going to show you all the fantastic resources and how easy it is for you to be able to access them. Thanks, Roy.
Thanks, Frances. Now, saying that, like in all good classroom practice, some will probably go wrong. But what I want to show you is just the simplicity of using the Oak National Academy website. Now, if you want to find out more about how we created all the lessons and the curriculum, you can go back to some of those previous presentations Frances mentioned at the beginning. But now we're just going to show you about how to access the teaching resources. There's also information about the curriculum plans, but also has some support for your pupils too. So there's a QR code on the screen. I know this presentation will be available for you to download a little bit later. But there's also the web link too. So let's have a quick look at these resources. So here's the Oak site. First of all, I'm going to go through the teaching resources at the top. Obviously, you can search things through a keyword. I'm just going to go straight to Key Stage 3 this evening just to show you. What's been really handy is that Oak have actually pulled out the cooking and nutrition separately from D&T. It just makes it really easy to go in and get the information that you want rather than multiple clicks to go through. So we're going to click straight in. So this is all of the units. So we've got the filter here on the right hand side, the year, all years. So there's a 7, 8 and 9 is displayed. So 12 units because there's 4 units per year. If I just want to look at year 7, I can see the 4 units that are here, or perhaps just year 8. You should put those up, and year 9. As I mentioned, you can see a pattern there. It always starts with the cooking units, then it goes into healthy eating, then it looks at sort of like where food comes from, the sort of food provenance type area, and then some sort of social aspect. But saying that, the cooking is embedded in all of them because we really wanted to make sure it was really rich going through. So let's just look at it all. So I'm looking at the unit view, so helicopter view overall. I could also just look at threads going through. So am I interested in food culture, perhaps just food hygiene, origins, cooking, healthy eating, and so forth. I'm going to keep it all of those. And I'm going to start going into year 8, I've decided, and I'm going to look at more sustainable diets this evening. So I click on that. So these are the 3 lessons within this particular unit. So I'm going to click on the first lesson, Plant Rich and Diverse. And right at the top, straight away, there's a download all. So you can download all of the materials just with one click. I think that's a great way of getting it. If you use Oak a lot, you can actually share activities with your pupils as well. So that's a really kind of good thing. You should investigate that definitely. And you can create a free account and you can actually add this into your own sort of teacher dashboard and share that too. If you scroll down the screen, you can then find all of the slide decks. So that's available as Google Slides or as a PowerPoint presentation, and you can click through this. So you can see there was the outcome, there's the different learning, and here's some information around sustainable diets. So again, there might be too much text here, but you can take what you want. You can modify this and make it your own. What we've tried to do is provide lots of information that you can use to support your lessons. And this is something quite different. As I mentioned as well, this is an example, for example, of one of the kind of checks for understanding. So there's the slide decks. There's also information about that key learning, which I think is great. So it gives you some information there. So one of the key learning, for example, is the Eat Well guide has a 32% lower environmental footprint than the current national diet. So that's actually quite helpful when we're thinking about a plant-rich and diverse diet within the context of where food comes from. There's also keywords, so plant-rich, diverse, sustainable food system. So we're starting to introduce some different vocabulary, and I really love the kind of common misconception. So I think that's a great one, and that might be a really useful thing to kickstart a lesson, for example, and get a bit of discussion going with your pupils. If we scroll down, you can then see there's the video, so you can go through that, and there's me on this one presenting the lesson, and there's also the captions available if you want them. And it goes through the whole lesson. That one's 28 minutes. So if you suffer with insomnia, that's a great video to go and have a look at. Then you can also download all the worksheets that are available. And again, these are available as a Word document, editable, or a PDF. And then there's the prior knowledge quiz, as well as the exit quiz too. So a huge range of information that you can get. If I then click onto another one, let's say the mushroom burgers with the flatbreads, again, the lesson slides are here. You can also jump across. So the first bit might be about making informed choices, but I might be really interested in, do you know what? I love this, but I want to go straight through to the cooking aspects. And even in here, you've got all the information you can get. And this is a little bit about dovetailing. So we've tried to introduce some different terms because this recipe is about making two separate recipes and bringing them together. There's some information about what dovetailing means. And then we go on to then look at the different food skills that they might use as they go through this lesson, including videos where it's appropriate to, and different ways in which they could actually make these the different parts of the recipe. Again, there's the clips that are available, all the key learning. Another nice thing as well, there's some like a teacher tip, and that's really kind of practical and pragmatic. I really do like those. And again, like the other lesson, there's the keywords and common misconceptions too. Go back to the home page. So that's one way of finding all the resources. And of course, if you want to have a sneak peek and look at Key Stage 1 and 2, please do. There's some great material there. Perhaps you're supporting different needs, different additional needs. So do have a look because there's some great materials there that might be right for you. I talked about going through teaching resources. Now we can have a look through curriculum plans. And this is a great way to look at stuff. So I click my subject, so cooking and nutrition. I then do the age phase, which is secondary. And here I get a slightly different helicopter view of the unit sequencing. So again, I can see year 7, year 8, or year 9, or all, and I've got the threads. But what I think is really powerful here is there is an explainer about the curriculum. Now, this might be really helpful if you're reviewing or monitoring your own scheme of learning, scheme of work, and really want to talk about what you intend to do and why you intend to do it. So we've spent quite a lot of time writing this for you about the overall overarching purpose of it, about the principles, about being knowledge rich, about sequence, about evidence informed, flexible, diverse, and accessible as well, including its principles too. There's some great stuff here, and also you can download it too. So that's just another way to access the information. The last quick thing I want to show you is the pupils. Now, I'm not going to show you tonight, it's for a future presentation, but there's also some great AI stuff that you can do on this platform. So I'd really encourage you, if you've got time, to have a look at that. But for the pupils, what you can do is you can find a lesson. So the pupil puts in what year group they are, year 7, 8, or 9. So let's go to year 9, for example. They're doing cooking and nutrition. And then you might say, do you know what? It's about global food challenges. And I'm going to do fish strips, street wraps, try and say now. And what you could do, of course, is that gives you a URL up the top there. This is some information because it's a practical lesson, so you understand. You could give that as a button. You could send that to pupils so they could access this straight away without going through that menu. And there's an introduction, but also there's a starter quiz. They could watch the video and they could therefore do the worksheet as they're going through, and they could have the exit quiz too. So it might be useful piece of cover work, might be useful independent study, homework, so forth. Let's give you a quick example, a starter quiz here. So this one is I have to move this into the right area. Now, I'm not actually looking at what I'm doing, so probably got all that wrong. And there you go. Go to the next question. I can then put this in. So health, let's see if that's right. Oh, no, I got it wrong again. Going to the next question. So you can see here how it gives me some interactive questions as I go through. So I would encourage you to have a look at the Oak National Academy website and to go through and see how it can support your teaching and learning as well as support your pupils too. Okay, so the next part was about CPD opportunities for you. So we've had a quick look at the curriculum overview. I showed you that on the Oak website. I would really implore you to explore the curriculum in more detail and assess its content and think about what works really well for you and your pupils. And to do that, have an audit about what you currently do and what you would like to do, and think about your journey. How would you get there? There's some audit tools available. I'm going to show you where there are in a moment, and you can use this all as an example and help to inform your own planning, your own scheme of learning or scheme of work. And just really think about this question: how could this be useful for your school planning? I know it's difficult at the moment with NEAs and lots of other things, but this might help you think about refreshing, about updating maybe 1 or 2 lessons, or just providing a bit of new variety to new recipes, thinking about their food skills too. So have a look at what the curriculum offers to you. Also, all the lessons, quizzes and worksheets. So there's a whole range of them, not just what's in secondary, but in primary too. So overall, there's 108 lessons, slides, quizzes and worksheets, which have been written, checked and double checked, ready for you. So review a lesson, for example, check out the teacher tip and also those common misconceptions. I think they're really valuable aspects that you could use and you could talk about them. And then think about what subject knowledge and skills that you might need to support lessons. As I say, you might be a trainee, ECT, or a non-specialist. So this might be really helpful for you to audit what you need to do and what CPD in the future you might actually need to. There's all the lessons that are available, and we quickly looked at these. And again, that might be useful for you to observe different pedagogy, vocabulary use and modelling too. Sorry, it's the evening. And also about considering the different areas of development and to watch and update your own teaching too, perhaps in areas that you're less familiar to you. And you can use these videos perhaps part of a whole CPD session as well, maybe to cover different food skills or to explain how different concepts are also mentioned too. I'm going to hand over to Francis now, who's going to give you a quick update on the recipes.
Great, thanks, Roy. So as Roy said, we've got lots and lots of recipes, new recipes for you to have a look at. And what we would recommend as you're going to be potentially auditing your scheme of work, we'd also want you to potentially reflect on your current selection of recipes. So thinking about the food skills that you're going to be covering, is there really progression going through from the beginning of year 7 to the end of year 9 and then leading in to year 10? What's the learning that's being covered? As we've said a couple of times, it's not just about making the recipe, it's about everything else that goes into that particular recipe and understanding the food, the ingredients, the culture behind it, etc. Cost, thinking about the cost of your recipes. I know that that's becoming an important issue in schools and also for families as well at the moment. So have a think about whether your recipes are good value, whether there's something you could do. And we've been very careful to think about the ingredients that we've used to make sure that they are good value. Diversity, there's lots and lots of information around about pupil voice. We've done some research with the British Nutrition Foundation a couple of years ago, but thinking about pupil voice and diversity and what pupils really want to make. And so we've tried to build that into the recipes that we've included for Oak. But what about your schemes of work? Are you really making recipes that your pupils want to make, that they're familiar with, that they would want to make when they go home and eat again with their families, but also adding something new that they're learning about other cultures? Then also thinking, once you've done that, whether there's an opportunity for you personally or as a department or a team to think about doing some sort of CPD. We would thoroughly recommend with all recipes that you trial them beforehand. We've tried and tested these recipes. Roy's done so. Fiona Mather, who was our subject reviewer from Oak, tested them. I've also tested them. So we know that they work, but we do know that obviously different timings, different settings in schools, different equipment, different ovens, they all work in different ways. So it's really important that you do practice and test recipes. Thinking about ingredient type and quantities. Is there anything you need to learn a little bit about the ingredients? Is there any background that you can bring into the recipe and the information you're giving to teachers? The equipment needed, that's from a practical point of view. Have you got enough equipment? Or is it a piece of equipment that you need to practice yourself using? Timing is almost 90% of getting a lesson successful, I think, within secondary, particularly if you've got a short lesson, 50 minutes or an hour. So practice your timings and use the recipes that we've provided to help you do that. Hygiene and safety, for me, that's a really, really important thing. So making sure that you are considering that. Food skills, your own food skills and also your pupils' food skills. Are your food skills, are you competent and confident in that? And are you able to demonstrate those to your pupils? Alongside that, are you able to think about what you might do if something goes wrong? So there's lots of advice and resources around that elsewhere, particularly on Food A Fact of Life, that would help you with that. But also other learning that you're going to include in the recipes, and again, your own skills and knowledge around that. So could it be about health? Do you need to potentially update a little bit around healthy eating and nutrition? What about your food science knowledge? Do you need to update that? And where food comes from? So there are lots and lots of opportunities to do CPD, both as a team and also individually. And then using the additional materials that I spoke about earlier on. So thinking about your classroom management. So some of you may be very experienced teachers, some of you may be new. So therefore, you want to think potentially about how you're going to manage your class. And so we've given you some support and advice around that. Modifying recipes. Do you need to do a little bit more sort of training yourself around allergens and thinking about allergenic ingredients and the alternatives that you can use? And again, you can use the recipes and the additional information. And then also risk assessment. I mentioned that CLEAPS is the place to go for risk assessment, but also if you want to have a little bit of a background understanding about why we do risk assessments and how you go about that, we do have some information on Food A Fact of Life that will give you that background information, and then that would also help with your general personal and professional development. Thank you, Roy.
Thanks, Frances. And what I'm going to do now is just have a quick look at other support and resources that are available to you. So in addition to all the Oak materials, and I would really urge you to go and have a look at those, BNF has also developed a number of things to help you. So one of them is an interactive CPD planner, and you can probably just see the Excel sheet on the screen here. And it's just something you can download. It's very simple. There's a very nice, very honest audit tool that you can have a look at, and what it does based on what you put in, it suggests different forms of training and other resources that you might want to look at. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that and see what it says, see how it can support you. So that's one good one. The other one is there is some training and resources decision tree, and that's almost like a PowerPoint, but it's an interactive PowerPoint, so you're guided through as you go through, and that will sort of talk about the different training that's available through Oak or through BNF on behalf of Oak, but also the different resources that are available to you as well. So if you're short of time, that's one way very quickly to go through, and it's a bit more fun and engaging too. There's also some curriculum planner decision trees, and that's really helpful just for Key Stage 3, because what that does is say, well, the Oak model is 12 lessons per year, and that's just what we had. We didn't have any other sort of way of changing that. But what happens if you only have 8 lessons? Which ones should you do? What's the most important? Or perhaps you've got 16 lessons. What could you do? So what we've tried to do is to help you understand that. And we've been through and we've created the Oak lessons that we think are between 4 to 12 lessons per year. And then also we've used some lessons from the Food Effect of Life and also License to Cook to show what you could do beyond 12 lessons a year. So we really hope that resource is really helpful for you for your planning purposes. There's also an audit tool, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, that you could use. And then linked to that is a SMART goal planner, which would be really helpful for you to think about your SMART goals and your journey for teaching food. We can't do everything overnight, but we can make a plan and we can keep to it. And there might be over a short, medium or long term, but we can actually have a look at that. I think that's a great way to go forward. And also, as Francis mentioned at the very beginning, there's all the other previous training sessions that you can get access to. Even if you want to scrub through and just watch 5 minutes of it about, for example, how we've created the resources, that might be really valuable and support your professional development going through. And that's all available on the Food Effect of Life website. There's also lots of other stuff on Food Effect of Life, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So there's lots of support. There's the individual units to support the different areas between 11 and 14 and 14 to 16. There's the recipe support packs with all loads of recipes too. And there's lots of stuff around teaching and learning. So really supporting your professional development. There's the new essentials course that you might want to have a look at. That's a great way to look at what you're teaching, how you're teaching it, and sharpening your CPD, as well as the practical food skills video, the teacher version, which I think is a great thing. And I've also put on there Explore Food, which is a free nutritional analysis program which yourself and your pupils can use. So if you haven't used Food Effect of Life for a while, I should urge you to go and have a look. It's great. There's lots of content on there. In fact, sometimes I think there's too much, but that's who says too much is a bad thing. It's a brilliant resource for you to go and look at to support your food teaching. Right, Francis, I'm going to hand over back to you.
Thanks, Roy. That's great. Yes, sometimes I agree. There is a little bit too much on Food Effect of Life, and it's a bit difficult to find things sometimes. But hopefully, those links that we put on that slide before will help you find some of them. Okay, some next steps for you. So as we've mentioned, I think probably a couple of times, we think it would be a really good idea for you just to spend a little bit of time having a look at the Oak website and making yourself familiar with the resources. So that's all of the content that Roy went through on his demonstration, plus all the recipes and the additional materials. Also, then it'd be a good opportunity to audit what you currently do. And we have that audit tool, which is available on Food Effect of Life for you to use. And it's a really nice, simple audit tool, but actually gives you quite clear understanding about what you currently do and perhaps what any gaps are that you may want to cover with the Oak lessons. Try out a few of the lessons, worksheets, recipes, get a taste of them. As I said before, practice the recipes before you use them. And then also use the tools that Roy mentioned on Food Effect of Life. And as well as that, once you've done that, join us for the next training session. And on that note, the next training session is on the 11th of November, and that is going to be particularly at 7 p.m. for secondary food teachers. And that's going to be about strategies for success. So do join us then if you can. The recordings of the other webinars are already available, and we will be uploading this one to the Food Effect of Life website in the next couple of days as well. So before we finish, just a couple of minutes to think about whether we've got any questions, and I'll just have a look through the chat. I don't think there have been any, but actually I've got a couple. And Sam, I'm going to put you on warning for this. I'm going to ask this first question to Roy, and then I'm going to come to you. So if you're there, be prepared. So Roy, can you give us one top tip for secondary teachers?
Well, I think for me, it was, I think you've already mentioned it, so I'm going to repeat it again because it's so important. Test the recipe. And I remember when I was doing teacher training, I made so many things at home, and some were a disaster, some worked really well. But by doing it, you can work out where the problems arise, or where there's going to be crunch points in the classroom. So you imagine it goes wrong for you. Imagine that with 30 kids all going wrong or all going right. So what happened? Why did it happen? And what can you put in place to make sure that doesn't happen on a much more epic scale, particularly when you've got to evaluate yourself at the end of a lesson when you're in teaching practice as well. So that would be my one thing. Really test it out until you bottom it out. It works successfully. But by doing that, you've really then worked out lots of other strategies to mitigate those issues back in the classroom.
Fantastic. Absolutely right, Roy. Sam, would you be able to add anything to that?
I don't know if I can. I mean, that is the number one thing. I mean, certainly when I was originally a design and technology teacher and then started teaching cooking and nutrition, and I thought I had my timings down and I thought I could, manage 25 pupils in a short time space. But then, of course, with design and technology, you put everything in a box and you hide it away until the next week. Can't do that with cooking and nutrition, can you? So it certainly sorted me out. I think I'll answer this question framing it from an oak perspective. And I think I would say have a look at the additional materials, because there's going to be something in there that I think you haven't thought of or you haven't maybe considered. And I think they're a fantastic resource, which you've already talked about there today, that can support you in your classroom. So do have a look at those when you're going through the cooking and nutrition curriculums, because there will be something in there which I'm sure will support you even further than the rest of the resources already will.
Great. Thank you. And then one final question, Roy, I'm going to ask you this. So lots of schools have got units which focus on food around the world. So have we included anything like that, particularly a unit around food around the world?
Yeah, that's a good one, because I think originally our plan was to include a unit or some units on that. But in discussion with Sam and others at Oak and thinking about those Oak principles as well, about the diversity part, we decided actually it should be every lesson. So what we've tried to do is to have a range of recipes that reflect sort of British culture, and I mean it in a modern sense, as well as food from around the world. So I remember, you'll probably remember, Francis, when we were putting this together, we had lots of spreadsheets and we looked at where recipes came from, and we even checked each one against the Eat Well guide, and so forth. So I think that's the first thing about recipes. But also in every lesson, we try to make sure when we're talking about where food comes from, we try to use lots of different examples, not just the ones that children might be familiar with. And when I mean familiar, it might be that some kids are familiar with okra and some aren't familiar with okra. So it's not what's unusual, but it's that being familiar. And we've tried to use different types of ingredients as well as different cuisines and different countries. So I don't know if you ever had a lesson on Mongolian cuisine, but we've even got Mongolia in this. So we've tried that. And I know we've picked lots of recipes, for example, where I couldn't pronounce the names, which isn't hard, but I had to get Google to help me pronounce some of those names because they're quite difficult and it was challenging. But I think it's the absolutely right thing that it's not just one individual unit, it's actually spread amongst all of Key Stage 3 and actually Key Stage 1 and 2 as well.
Absolutely. Great. Thanks, Roy. I think that's an important point to make. So that's really helpful. Thank you. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you for the comments that you've put in the chat. We really appreciate them. And what we would also really appreciate is if you could possibly complete the evaluation, please. As I said, it will only take you about a minute to do, but we'd be grateful for you to do so. And then you would get a certificate once you've completed it and submitted it that you can add your name to, and then print it out and put it in your records for your own professional development going forward. So we hope to see you next time. So that's the 11th of November. And thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. Bye-bye.